unfold.
Sometimes the biggest changes in history don't come from some big, grand declaration or a massive war. Sometimes they come from a simple, almost accidental invention. This is the story of a revolution that was sparked by a doctor, a moth, and a sealed glass jar, and how this little box completely redrew the economic and ecological map of our entire planet. So to really get this, you have to understand the central problem of the 19th century. Imagine this. You're a botanist working for the British Empire. You find a plant in, say, China that could make your country an absolute fortune, but you have to get it back to England alive. How on earth do you do that when the journey is a 6 to 9 month nightmare on a wooden ship? Well, the short answer is you probably don't. The odds were just insane. Back in 1819, a surgeon for the East India Company did the math. For every 1,000 plants shipped from China to England, you know how many survived? One. Just one. That's a 0.1% survival rate. This logistical nightmare was, for all intents and purposes, the thing that protected the natural monopolies of entire nations.
Yeah, this whole challenge was known as the tyranny of distance. Before the invention we're going to talk about, moving plants across oceans was basically a suicide mission. Let's break down exactly why.
Okay, so if you're a plant on the deck of a sailing ship, you're getting hit with a constant barrage of deadly salt spray that's just clogging up your leaves. Fresh water, forget about it. That was strictly rationed for the crew, so the plants were left to just dry out. And the temperature swings were brutal. We're talking from freezing gales to scorching equatorial heat. So you think, okay, let's put them below deck. Bad idea. Down there, they're plunged into total darkness and end up succumbing to fungal rot in the damp, stagnant air. It was a no-win situation. So the solution didn't come from some famous botanist or a fancy government lab. Nope. It came, as these things so often do, completely by accident, from a London doctor who was just frustrated with a problem in his own backyard. Let me introduce you to Dr. Nathaniel Ward. He lived in Whitechapel, and back then, the London air was this thick, toxic smog of coal smoke and sulfuric acid. He absolutely loved ferns, but this pollution killed every single one he tried to grow. So, in 1829, he's doing a completely unrelated experiment. He seals a moth pupa inside a glass jar with some moist soil. The moth never came out, but something else happened. He noticed that the moisture in the jar created this perfect little miniature weather system. It would evaporate during the day, condense on the glass, and then rain back down on the soil at night. And in this perfectly sealed, self-watering world, a tiny fern and some grass began to grow, completely protected from London's toxic smog. He had, by total accident, created a portable ecosystem. The impact was, well, it was immediate and a total game changer. Ward built bigger versions of his jar, and they became known as Wardian Cases. In 1833, he sent 2 of them on an 8-month test voyage all the way to Australia and back. The survival rate for the plants inside jumped from, a pretty dismal 5% to an unbelievable 95%. Just like that, the tyranny of distance was broken. So with this new key, the British Empire could suddenly unlock the green gold of the world. The Wardian Case wasn't just a cool terrarium, it was about to become a primary tool of economic espionage. And the very first target? Tea. Britain was completely addicted to it, but China had this ironclad monopoly on production. To pay for its tea habit, Britain was exporting opium to China, which was fueling wars and all kinds of instability. The only real, long-term solution was to steal the tea industry itself and just transplant it to British-controlled India. So they hired this Scottish botanist, Robert Fortune, for what was basically a mission of industrial espionage. He disguised himself as a Chinese official, snuck into these forbidden tea regions, and uncovered critical secrets. For instance, Europeans had always thought that green and black tea came from 2 totally different species. Fortune discovered, nope, they're the same plant, the only difference was in the processing. So using these Wardian Cases, Fortune essentially shipped a mobile nursery. He smuggled out 20,000 tea plants, a lot of which actually germinated on the way. But just as important, he also smuggled out the software. 8 Chinese tea experts who could teach the secrets of manufacturing in India. The heist was a complete success. The next great heist was for rubber. See, the world's entire supply came from Brazil, and rubber seeds lose their viability in just a few weeks. The clock was ticking. In 1876, an explorer named Henry Wickham collected 70,000 of these seeds, chartered a steamship, and basically bluffed his way past Brazilian customs. Speed was everything. He got them to London, where only a tiny fraction, just 4%, germinated. But that was enough. Those few fragile seedlings were packed into 38 Wardian cases and shipped off to Asia, creating the foundation of a brand new global industry. These botanical heists, all made possible by this simple little box, would have absolutely devastating economic consequences. They were about to rewrite the entire world map of wealth and power. The economic collapse for Brazil was just staggering. In 1900, the Amazon produced 95% of the world's rubber. But once the British plantations in Asia, grown from Wickham's stolen seeds, came online, they could produce it way more cheaply. By 1928, the Amazon's market share had plummeted to just over 2%. Its boomtowns became ghost towns. And it wasn't just about cash crops. The Wardian Case also moved the cinchona tree. Its bark is the source of quinine, which was the only effective treatment for malaria. By moving the tree from the Andes to India, Britain made quinine cheap and abundant. This medicine directly enabled the colonization of Africa, which for centuries had been known as the white man's grave because of the disease. So you see the pattern here, right? It was a playbook. In case after case, the Wardian Case was the tool they used to take a valuable plant from its native home, break that country's natural monopoly, and transplant the whole industry to a corner of the British Empire where they could control it. Tea from China to India, rubber from Brazil to Malaya, cinchona from the Andes to India and Java. But the story doesn't end there, because the box left a much darker, hidden legacy. A whole set of unintended ecological consequences that, believe it or not, we are still dealing with today. See, the case was an indiscriminate arc. It was a little too good. It didn't just carry a plant, it carried the soil and everything hiding inside it. Pests, fungi, foreign seeds, you name it. It moved entire microecosystems across the planet, and this contributed to the global spread of invasive species and devastating diseases like coffee leaf rust, which completely wiped out Ceylon's coffee industry back in the 1870s. And this practice enabled a system we now call monoculture. The Wardian Case allowed for these massive plantations, growing just a single genetically identical crop. And while that's incredibly efficient, it also creates a system that is profoundly fragile. I mean, it's super vulnerable to being wiped out by a single disease. And the ultimate example of this, it's the banana you probably buy at the grocery store. The Cavendish banana makes up 99% of the global export market, and every single one of them is a clone. They are all genetically identical descendants of one single plant that was transported in a Wardian Case back in the 1830s. And that lack of diversity makes the entire global supply terrifyingly vulnerable to a new disease. So a simple glass box, invented to save a few ferns from smog, ended up restructuring global trade, enabling colonialism, and creating the fragile, globalized agricultural system we all rely on today. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the invisible technologies, the unseen boxes of our own time, that are quietly reshaping the world right now?